Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished veteran from the Indian Army, turned entrepreneur and professional, Col Samrendra Kumar. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ashutosh. Indeed, a huge honor to be invited to this show, The Brand Called You. I believe it's the third largest brand in the world. And personally, hugely honored because I know you're son of a very decorated soldier, a brigadier with a Kirti Chakra, the second highest. And I'm hugely honored that my name figures with him in the Chetwood Hall.
Thank you.
So
very nice.
Honored. And your husband of, I'm told, naval doctor. And kind of your very close relationships with, and you've been a corporate leader, you've been an entrepreneur. So hugely honored.
Thank you so much. Sam is the co-founder and managing director of MitKat Advisory. He's a distinguished veteran and he won the Sword of Honor and the President's Gold Medal at the Indian Military Academy. And all of us know to get the Sword of Honor and the President's Gold Medal is a huge, huge, huge accomplishment. Only the best gets it, and once a year, I think. So, Sam, let's start talking about you and your journey. What was the motivation to leave a promising career in the armed forces and start off on your own?
I think the informal conversations before we began this show took me about 36 years back. It took me back to my first day in military academy. So I must admit, I came from a very humble background in Bihar. Bihar was the most laggard even among the Bimaru states then. And we used to sit on ground and study. And I started studying English in class 6th only. So when I reached NDA, first day, I found all these sons of generals, air marshals, admirals, people from Doon, Mayo, Stephens, modern school, DPS. So they all spoke fluent English, looked much more polished and accomplished. And I was really having a complex. I thought, I'm just not going to make it. And then God intervened. God always helps you when you need it. And yeah, so they took us to barber shop and they gave us a crew cut and they took off all our jeans and polo tees, fancy dresses and gave us, khaki dress. So we were all now, the playing field has been leveled on day one. And 4 years down the line, as you said, very, very kindly introduced, when I passed out and commanded the Sword of Honor, commanded the passing out parade and received the Sword of Honor and President's Gold Medal in the presence of my parents sitting in the first row. I think the overwhelming feeling was, wow, it didn't matter where you started from.
Correct.
What you do and what you accomplish, that matters. So thank you for taking me there.
Well said. Well said.
So now I will come to your question. The question that you asked me. This was just so I had a dream run in the army. I represented Indian Army at the staff course in UK, which is a very prestigious staff course. 93 countries represented there. My batchmates from Air Force and Navy are still in service. Both are doing very well. Both are 3-star, CNC South in Air Force and 3-star in Navy. So they're doing very well. And I chose to hang uniform on the last day of command of my own unit in which I was commissioned. So it was a huge honor, probably a high point in life. So military, if you're aware, last day of command is a very, very special. And if you're hanging uniform, the whole battalion lines up and then you even really ceremonial send off. They pull you out in a jeep. So it was a high. I always wanted to leave on a high. When people still ask you, why are you leaving? And not when they start asking you, why don't you leave? And I think, Ashutosh, it's something that you have also followed in your life.
Correct. Well said. Well said. So let's move to now MitKat Advisory. Tell me about this venture and what is the background of the name MitKat?
So do you want the official version or unofficial version?
Whatever you want to tell.
So when I was leaving army, I was very busy till the last day of command. So your command is in combat, in active operations. Yeah. It's very, very busy. So I had no time to think about what I will do. What I carried with me were just the learnings from the army, which have stood me well in corporate career and in entrepreneurial career, and just the attitude that you can do it. So nothing is impossible. So MitKat is a leading Asian risk consultancy. And so risk consultancy, we work collaboratively with our customers to de-risk their businesses and protect their people, assets, information, brands, such things. Now, when you talk about risks are, when you talk to a banker, they will talk about liquidity risk, financial, credit, hedging, those kind of risks. So we don't do that. Talk to lawyers, they will talk about litigation. So we are more into operational risks, so the geopolitical risks, security risks, integrity risks, things like cybersecurity, physical security, fraud risk management. So those kind of stuff we do. The name. So we wanted to get a name, and we were not getting a name. And then I had two friends. One was Mittal and one was Katragadda. So we said, okay, I'm your cat, and so let's make it MitKat. And Sam, you run it. And I said, now what will I do with this? Useless name. People are saying it is like Kit Kat. What will I do? So, but then we made it mitigating knowledge age threats. So now we are mitigating knowledge age threats.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. And you worked with 50 of the top 100 global companies. What is the kind of work that you do in mitigating risk?
So very quickly, I'll tell you how we got started. What was the motivation to start? Because security, and when I left army and 26/11 happened soon after that, just 7 years after 9/11 had happened in the US. So that time, security and risk consultancy was completely dominated by foreign players who had very little understanding of India. So if a bomb blast happened in Kashmir or some incident happened in Nagaland, so there will be travel bans to basically Chennai and Bangalore.
Correct.
So we said this must change, and we have capable people in India. So it was our desire to build a great brand, with a deep understanding of India, the developing markets, the Asian continent, which we can take to the world. So that is where we started from. And what's the kind of work we do? Essentially, we saw that security was very proactive. It was like non-glamorous. It was just associated with guards and other things. We wanted security to be business relevant, employee friendly, very intelligence-led, tech-enabled, very consistent, and give a great employee experience and save people, money, save businesses money. So the kind of work we do is essentially we started out as a consulting company. Then we went so that gave us a little bit of brand and traction with the customers. Then we switched to services. Now we are largely a technology. We are largely into you can say a technology company.
Okay, very interesting, very interesting. And what have been some of your challenges as you have scaled up?
So I think that's another excellent question. In fact, I am tempted to ask you the same question because you have huge amount of entrepreneurial learning and
when you start your podcast, I will answer that.
Okay, thank you. So let me start with the beginning. First generation entrepreneur, you understand, didn't know where to start. Didn't know how to form a company. No talent wanted to join us. I told you people used to tell us the name is frivolous KitKat. I used to tell them, okay, if Tata Bata has worked, MitKat will also work. And in fourth month, on top of that, we lost a lot of money with a very great sporting project. And I had to sell my house to keep the company afloat, actually. We had 22 people and we didn't want to let them go, we didn't want to fire them. It was something which was very, very kind of, we just couldn't think of it as a fudgy. So I think the decision was more motivated by fudgy background as entrepreneur. But I think it earned us a good reputation. Let me talk about the entrepreneurial learnings. I think that's the more interesting bit of the question. I think you will agree with me. I think entrepreneurship involves a fundamental mismatch between resource and ambition.
Absolutely.
You would absolutely agree with that. So essentially, what I learned is technology has to be at the core if you want to scale up. So I said we started the consulting, then went to service, and now we are more a technology company. And on the way to becoming very asset-light, data-heavy, and algorithmically inspired. I think that's the way to go. So one thing I learned is focus, and we call it do less to do more. Because you meet entrepreneurs that will tell you, I want to do 3 things and one will succeed. And I tell them none will. If you do one thing, purely focus on that, and then your chances, and you're passionate about, and you can rally people around your cause, then the chances of success exponentially increase.
Well said.
People. I think people are the backbone. You must surround yourself with people who are brighter than you and don't feel insecure in their company and give the devil their due. Let go is a very important thing. I heard Mr. late Jaswant Singh saying, the graveyards of the world are full of people who thought they were indispensable. So we must let go. Cash flows are important because one of my co-founders used to tell us, who is no longer with us, he used to tell us, top line is vanity, bottom line is sanity, and cash is reality.
Wow. What a great line.
COVID actually taught us to segregate good and bad costs.
Mhm.
So and I also learned that there is no right or wrong age to be an entrepreneur, because the founder of the whole lot of entrepreneurs who start early, and then there are people who start in the middle, some people like you, and then there are people like founders of KFC who started at 66, or my own chairman, after leaving army as a lieutenant general, he started at probably 61, 62, and he's 5 successful entrepreneurial ventures.
Wow.
And he had a lot of job offers in government and private sector. So again, you can. And finally, I learned that never waste a crisis, because it takes a crisis for leaders to shine. Because when times are good, even donkeys look like horses.
Correct.
So it's only during crisis that you can figure out who is the leader.
Well
so
said.
that's roughly.
Very well said. So moving on, Sam, as a security and risk professional, how do you de-risk client business and protect vital assets for them?
Okay, this is getting a little technical, but I will try to keep it very simple. So Ashutosh, you understand it well, but just for the benefit of listeners. So risk is about 5 things. So firstly, every organization has got asset, something of value, like people, material, information, brand. So these are all assets. Now, there are natural and man-made threats, from terror, crime, or interstate conflicts to hackers, bad guys, who exploit vulnerabilities or weaknesses to create risks to assets. And these risks could be strategic, operational, financial, legal, reputational. And these risks have to be basically brought down or mitigated to acceptable level by application of countermeasures or controls, which could be people, technology, infrastructure, or processes. So that's what we do. We identify assets, of businesses, and see how threats exploit vulnerabilities to create risks to those organizations, and how we can mitigate them in a cost-effective manner, so that the business interruption is minimal and business can flourish.
Interesting. So, you spoke a few minutes ago about technology and risks. The risks that, when I was in the corporate world 3 decades or 2.5 decades ago, it used to be someone coming and taking away your, IPR. And we used to be very conscious of the fact that any kind of confidential documents had to go through a shredder. And then we started to find that people would collect the shredder waste and be able to combine those pieces and get the vital secrets out of the company out. What are some of the major security and risk challenges businesses face today?
So essentially, let me look at your risk is very context specific. What you call that is called dumpster diving, where actually you collect garbage and you can really put pieces together, and we used to do it early in our career. And risk is very context specific. If you look at, if you go to oil and gas or a chemical environment, you'll probably see a lot of emphasis on fire safety, because it's very inflammable, a lot of things on environment, a lot of environmental pressures and concern. If you go to factory setup, it's more about unions. If you talk to bankers, I told you, they talk about all those financial risks, liquidity hedging, forex, etc. If you go to IT and data sensitive organizations like banks, they're very, very worried about cybersecurity. If you go to an e-commerce guy, it is more about, the whole lot of last mile delivery guys you will see floating, and that introduces people risk. Correct. They have assets which are lying all over the ground and all over the supply chain. So that introduces asset risk. So when people and asset risk combine, then they have operational risk that leads to financial and brand risk. So every organization faces. Now, if you look at more strategic level, if you look at from a national level and large enterprises, I think they could be categorized more into geopolitical risks, which is more like interstate conflict, or US China not getting along well, or terrorism, or one of those things.
Sure.
Or socio-economic risks, which could be something like crime, or it could be Naxalism. There are environmental and health risks, from pandemic to climate change, which is a ticking time bomb. There is cybersecurity risk, which will fall under technology risks. So that there are travel-related risks, physical risks to employees. So you could go on and on. Everybody sees it from their own lens.
Correct. And you're involved in all these areas? Yeah,
we are involved in.
Across the whole country?
Across the country, and we've now worked in 40 countries across 5 continents.
Wow. Fantastic. So one of the other things that, when I talk to business leaders, one of the big concerns they have is that while technology is very, very good for growth of their businesses, there's also a huge risk associated with technology, either through hacking or through overdependence, or just through technology getting old. I'd love to get your perspective on how are you using technology to manage the risk for your clients?
I think that's a wonderful question. And if I were to break your question in two parts, I think you're asking me two things.
Yeah.
How is technology increasing risk? And in turn, how do we use actually technology to de-risk?
Absolutely. Yes.
So is that what you're saying?
Correct. Two separate questions.
Yeah. So let's look at some of these terms, which are very much bandied about these days: digitization, automation, digitalization, and digital transformation. Now, these are all terms, which are used, and they have slightly different connotation. But what they all do is, and we can come to that, but what they all do is they increase the surface area for attackers. Now, attackers now can operate over much wider front. So there will be about 20 billion devices, IoT devices. Now, each device is a vulnerability. And you add to that, 5-6 billion users, of which 4.5 billion have no idea, about security. So that kind of makes the job of these bad guys very easy. And to see the amount of data, you have UPI, so you'll have millions of transactions daily, 40 billion transactions in a year. So they have to be lucky, 0.00001%. So guy sitting in Jamtara, he can hack into the system. And it's kind of getting much more, it's much easier to procure these things, procure the technology. It's much affordable. So you can actually buy a commercially off-the-shelf drone. And one guy brought Gatwick Airport to standstill in December 2018.
Correct.
There was an attack on Indian thing. Even militaries are, still learning how to grapple with all the challenges of the bad guys just getting access to technology. So how do we turn it around? How do we? So as I said, most of the attacks are now machine led. So if you want sophisticated defenses, whether at national level or at enterprise level, large enterprises I'm talking about. So your defenses also have to be machine led, because human beings over a period of time, tend to kind of get tired, get things. So it has to be very, very consistent. The technologies which are showing promise are machine learning and deep learning technologies, self-learning algorithms. So we have an AI assisted platform. So that is able to give customized, intelligence to and alerts and advisories to each of the command centers and to large organizations to stay ahead of the game. For example, if it is a logistics company or e-commerce company, if a tree falls down on a road, they must know and they should automatically and they should be able to reroute so as not to lose business. Or Mumbai, if it is going to rain tomorrow and it's going to be a high tide together and it's going to lead to flooding, then you can leave employees 2 hours earlier if you knew that. So then blockchain is another. So we provide these kind of intelligence and alerts that is subscribed by world's largest corporations. So blockchains, I think blockchains are putting out the intermediaries and preventing tampering with ledgers.
Correct.
So that is another very kind of use for in high security things, and it will be very popular in banking and finance. Biometrics is showing another lot of promise, and you could have whole world actually everybody's biometrics taken, and you could have passports and other things linked. Cyber security, defensive technologies are proliferating, and again, bulk of them have AI and all at the center. And you at national level, we are having proliferation of these bodies, certain sectoral certs and all. So they are also using these two technology in a sophisticated manner. So I could go on and on, but just one more question. I think as a military guy, and you have some military background too, you will always understand there is always the race between good guys and bad guys. So there was tanks, and then anti-tank weapons came in, and then tanks increased their mobility, firepower, and protection, and then anti-tank got more sophisticated, and this race goes on. And then you have drones, and then counter-drone technologies, and then counter-drone, and you had electronic measures, and then came electronic countermeasures and electronic counter. So that I think that will go on and on.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So, all this technology and everything that we're being exposed to as human beings brings in this big element of privacy. And a lot of people, certainly in the urban centers around the world, feel that their privacy is being intruded into, which also means there is a challenge of your own security and someone coming into the world that you are living in, either as an individual, as a family, a society, or as a corporation. Do you also look at some of these?
Yes. So let's go back a little step. Let's dissect what you said. So firstly, nations, organizations, and business leaders across the world, they started realizing the value of data.
Correct.
And I have a research by a very respected organization which says that there will be more value accruing from data rather than from global trade.
Correct.
over the next few years, and probably you would agree with that.
Mhm.
So now all these valuable assets have to be protected. So now data is your crown jewel, so you need to protect it. So they started putting legislations. Last year, you would have seen China went into overdrive regulating, big tech. And then there were the other reasons. So data localization is becoming the next big thing. I mean, it's a global phenomena. We see it all across the world. And on privacy also, so there are laws which are combining security and privacy. And as you'll be aware, GDPR is the most famous among them. So legislations, let me look at it. There are of two types. One is the horizontal, which applies to everyone, which is like GDPR or something like that. Then there are sectoral. So healthcare, you will have HIPAA, or India is enacting its own DISHA. I love this government. They have got a lot of these acronyms. So you will have various kind of regulations to regulate banking or finance sector, to healthcare sector, ed tech sector. So our own individual data protection act law, that has been in works for some time now, and hopefully it will see the light of the day.
Okay.
Next section of parliament, inshallah.
Okay. So Sam, I'm now going to move to a few questions for you personally. My viewers and listeners love to get to know my guest a little better. So let me start by asking you that as a successful 4G, a successful businessman, recipient of such a high amount of recognition within the army, what would you say are 3 key milestones in your life or your career?
So I think I will not take the milestones I would not take the milestones, let's say, as a particular event. Sure. I would probably take 3 phases in life. So I think firstly, just as a village boy, I started as a village boy, and getting to army was a big cultural change, and I would say a shock. And then probably getting to being commanding officer of a combat unit, a very old decorated distinguished unit. So that I think completely changed my life. But in between, there was one more phase which I want to draw attention. When from an Indian citizen, I became a global citizen. First time that I went to UK to attend my staff course and did my master's from King's College London, you were exposed to 90 countries. People thought differently. You learned about the importance of diversity, the important dignity of labor, to get over pettiness, some of which we had been brought in being in a very enclosed environment. So that was, I think, the first kind of a thing, which was transformation from a village boy to that. Second is, I think, entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship gave me the, I think it was my calling. It gave me a chance to express myself, my creativity and ambition, put my expertise, whatever I have learned, for greater good of society, business, everyone. Helped me to democratize wealth, create job opportunities. So I think that has been very satisfying. Okay. I think family is, if I would be failing in my duty if I didn't say family, I think education is the best gift you can give to children. Okay. So let me just give you one interesting anecdote on this. I was an entrepreneur, and my daughter wanted to go overseas, and I didn't have a dime in my pocket. Even I did not get education loan. Okay. And on top of that, when you don't get education loan, and through your platform, I want to tell Government of India, if you don't get education loan, if you're poor enough, and if you still dare to send your children, you have to pay a 5% surcharge.
Wow.
So I have no money. My daughter wants to study, and happy to say that day after tomorrow, I'll be paying her last installment of her education.
Amazing. Congratulations. Amazing.
So you have to kind of give the best to your children. They shouldn't have to suffer the consequences of my living a career and getting onto the second. So I think these are 3 things I said.
Wonderful. So, I've always been very, very appreciative and partial to 4Gs because I know, irrespective of what your background may be, the values that you stand for are very similar. I want to ask you, what are some of the core values you believe in?
I mean, I think it is integrity, which I think will come top as a 4G. I think teamwork is very, very important. I think together we win. And then one more thing that I feel is human potential is limitless. And again, I want to give you a story very quickly in 30 seconds. So Jawan from my battalion joined my company and he didn't know how to operate a computer. So I told him that, I told a young person in my company, please teach him computer. He said, sir, he can't learn. I said, okay, if he doesn't learn in 7 days, you find another job, because then you are a poor leader. Believe you, in 6 days, he actually learned computer. And when we went to his home, he was trying to open daughter's computer and she would say, nahi, papa, toot jayega. He says, and he really opened and put the password and he was able to do that Word and Excel. So amazing. So human
What an amazing story. What an amazing story. So let me move now. I've got time for 2 more questions. So I'm going to combine two questions, and I'll ask you that what does success mean to you, and what inspires you?
I think success, it's a very, I think, very broad question. So I'll just try to make it very narrow, the answer. I think it's just about fulfilling my roles and responsibilities. And roles and responsibilities, you wear multiple hats. To family, like I said, give best education to the children in learning and help them pursue their calling and passion, like I did. To my organization, MitKat, we have a shared dream as a team, and we have to help realize. And as the head of the family, I have to help. I lead the marketing and branding. And so we have to make it a great brand, which is continuously admired by customers, which continuously reinvents itself and continuously attracts and retains the best talent. So that's my job. To the nation, I was a soldier first, and have been an honest taxpayer and a responsible citizen who abides by laws. Wonderful. And to a society, as an entrepreneur, I think use my skills and creativity. We democratize wealth, we create high quality jobs. I mentor veterans and entrepreneurs, and finally use networks to kind of add value to each other. And for the less fortunate, have a sense of empathy, and if you can give back something.
Wonderful. And my last question to you, and this is a question on failure. I also have a book on failure. I've often said and spoken at conferences that people in South Asia or East Asia don't teach children it's okay to fail. We're always taught first in class, head of the line, etc., etc. And then that manifests itself in our behavior patterns. Yet we fail, we learn. My question to you is, Sam, what have been some of your learnings from some of your mistakes?
So on just a very generic statement, I'm quite okay to fail, and I allow my team to fail, but I just tell them fail fast. Don't lie in lingering death, which as entrepreneurs you would kind of. But let me come to your question. Firstly, the first time as entrepreneurs, we all make mistakes. You would agree with that. There's nothing to hide. You know, I'm talking to a fellow entrepreneur. Yeah. So we all make mistakes. So first time is learning cost. Second time is stupidity. Third time is super stupidity. So now you're talking to a guy who is super stupid. I'm in the super stupid league. I became entrepreneur. People told us, don't do this. Experienced entrepreneurs like you mentored me. I still did the same mistake. So it was no longer learning cost, but I'll still count it as learning cost because it was my first cost.
Okay.
Then when I joined up with some other partners, they made the same mistakes, which I had already made. Okay. So we were now entering super stupid league. And one of the ventures went NPA, and we still kind of, today morning, I paid off the last installment to the bank with one-time settlement. Wonderful. So you know, kind of whatever you learn, you know, please keep learning costs low, fail fast. Now, let me just take a story from my family. And I just want to take two more themes because failure is also very close to my heart. My grandfather was doing well. He had few bit of land holding, and he was doing okay till the time he decided to be signatory to somebody. You know, he was a guarantor to somebody's loan, and he ran away. And thereafter, whole life, balance of life, whatever 5-6 years he lived, he was most of the time in the court, and he was drained of all the money, and that must have taken a toll. And he almost died a poor man. And he told us that never take loans. I still did the same mistake. I was director in a company where I knew people are not doing well, and I was hoping that it will kind of turn around, and it didn't. And so again, I've told you that I've joined the super stupid league, and hopefully my children are listening. They will not make the same mistake. On the specific mistake, I think wrong hiring is the worst mistake you can do as an entrepreneur. Probably you will agree. And so now we have tried to correct that. So finally we have bitten the bullet, and we said no. So when we hire, we have 7-0 rule. So 7 people see a person, and vice versa. He or she gets to see 7 people in the company. And if it is it has to be a 7-0. When if it is 6-0, or one guy says maybe, it's not a no, it's curtains. So that's how we try to learn.
Well said. Well said. On that note, Sam, thank you so much for speaking to me. It has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege talking to an army officer who's achieved so much in life. Thank you for talking to me about MitKat advisory, about all the stuff that you're doing for security and risk mitigation for so many companies from around the world. And thank you for talking to me about some of your values. Thank you and good luck.
So thank you very much, Ashutosh. It's been an absolute delight and honor talking to a legendary entrepreneur like you and somebody who values military so much. So thank you very much. I want to just end on one note that from 3500 BC to 1700 AD, India was 25% of global GDP. So flattening of the world, demographic dividend, the young people, I see the fire in their eyes, the young entrepreneurs. So I'm very, very bullish about the future of India. I think we must seize the moment. And to my young friends, our time has come. Thank you. Jai Hind.
What a positive note to end on. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.